America, welcome back to the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham. We're brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net. You own a business, know somebody that owns a business, make sure you're a part of it. freedomchamber.net. We have a healthcare solution. Big time stuff coming up in 2026 on the rise of healthcare. We have a solution inside the Freedom Chamber. Rod Martin and Dean Owen join me right now. And Rod, let's talk about what we've been seeing inside the Martin Report. Let's talk about the Department of War and what's going on with the Venezuelan boats and where you see that standing, how it's going to play out. Are there going to be more? Welcome your thoughts, Rod.
Well, first of all, I'm just glad that we have a Department of War. It's about time we dropped all this Orwellian language and we're honest about what it's there for. We don't want to have a war, but if we're going to fight, it's a war. It's not necessarily defense. Sometimes it's very much offense, and sometimes that's appropriate, as in the case of these Venezuelan drug boats. These guys are directly responsible. They're not the only people responsible, but they are responsible for hundreds of thousands of American deaths. That's dramatically worse than we have experienced in most of our wars. And in fact, 9/11, we lost fewer than 3,000 people. Pearl Harbor, we lost fewer than 3,000 people. But we're losing hundreds of thousands of people to fentanyl and other drug imports. We've been talking about a war on drugs since I was a kid. It's about time we actually had one. So Donald Trump is doing exactly what presidents have been supposed to do since George Washington. And the hypocrisy on the left is off the chart because Barack Obama and Joe Biden drone striked and cruise missiled thousands upon thousands of civilians in Afghanistan and Somalia and Iraq and all over the world, including American citizens, without trial, without due process, without a congressional declaration of war. So they're just talking out their hat. What gets me is some of the conservatives who say, oh, the president can't do anything without a declaration of war or without an express authorization of Congress. Well, first of all, he has an express authorization of Congress. Specifically, he has the authorization use of military force from 2001 against designated terrorist groups. And the Congress has given him the authority and duty to designate who is and is not a foreign terrorist group. So he's completely within the law as far as any of that goes. But the bigger point is the Constitution was written by people who didn't have telephones or telegraphs. They fully understood that the executive branch was there to execute in between sessions of Congress, which were pretty infrequent at the time. So the conservatives here want to reduce the president to a functionary in the name of trying to rein in an imperial executive. No, I'm sorry. Defending the seas from piracy and drug smuggling and other threats to the American citizen is exactly the job of the president, exactly what the Constitution requires, and Donald Trump is nailing it.
Well, I mean, people are probably watching right now going, why are we talking about drug boats and Venezuela inside the Business Pulse? Because it all comes down to what America needs to protect, and that's its citizens. You've got drug dealers out on the streets. What's it going to do to a neighborhood? It's going to have businesses closing up. We see it in Chicago all the time. We see it in major metropolitans. So this has a trickle-down effect in a bad way. When you're pumping in drugs through the oceans, through the Gulf of America, or wherever it may be, they're going to find their roost and find their way right into your neighborhood. So yeah, this does have a direct effect on businesses.
Look, if you enter a contract with somebody and they don't keep their end of the bargain, you're going to end up either eating some expensive cost or going to court and spending money on lawyers to solve your problem that way. Every time we have law breaking, we are increasing the tax burden of prosecutors and courts and all the different things we have to protect ourselves. Police, for heaven's sake. Why should our police be faced with the potential cost of their lives over drugs that we can stop on the high seas just outside of Venezuelan territorial waters? It's just nonsense. And Trump is actually doing what a series of presidents failed to do in actually attacking the source of the problem. Until we do that, we're going to keep having a problem. That's the bottom line.
Well, you know, when we were in Afghanistan or Kuwait or any of those countries, under the current liberal ideology, you could see a Taliban fighter across a field and you couldn't do anything to him because you hadn't given him due process yet. And that's the quickest way there is for us to lose a war. And so these precedences that we're setting up, because this is military action, have some very dangerous practical repercussions. If the left is allowed to we must have a due process, we must be proven guilty impact when we're talking about combat zones in other countries, and we are at war. This is a drug war. We've called it a drug war for years. This is a war. It's going to take military intervention. It's not something our civilian law enforcement can deal with because it's coming from other countries. So the arguments on the left are absolute filth and garbage and detrimental to the future existence of the United States of America.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% agree with both of your thoughts on that. Let's shift gears real quick. The Fed, are they going to drop rates again in December? Dean?
Betting markets are telling us that they're probably going to. My gut tells me we may get it in December, and then they'll start playing politics till after the next election. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think they can keep it down for the duration until the next election. I don't think they'll keep dropping them, but I don't think they can keep them where they are until the next election either. So it seems like if you've got a cynical view of the Fed as I do, you're probably going to think they're thinking strategically and drop it once now, get some heat off of Jerome Powell, and then just lock up till he's gone or until the next election.
I will say you and Rod have been spot on so far since we've been on the Business Pulse about what the Feds are going to do. Is there a wild card here, Rod?
No, I think they probably cut this month. I don't see how they avoid it. If they do, they are just blatantly playing politics. Maybe that's Powell's last shot as he heads out the door. Trump has said that he's picked his next Fed chairman. If I were guessing, that's probably Kevin Hassett, but, remains to be seen. I think the minute that change is made, you're going to see a significant directional change at the Fed. We actually have decent personnel there. All of a sudden, we can actually get some decent monetary policy. And look, I'm not in favor of ridiculously low interest rates in the manner of the previous decade. I think a lot of that was wrong-headed. We were flirting with zero and even negative interest rates at one point. That's absurd and has all kinds of deleterious effects on the economy that get lost. But at the same time, we're ridiculously too high. We're priced right now like a third world country, and it's just crazy. And it is politics. They cut to help Biden and Harris in the last election. They hiked again to hurt Trump. We've got to actually have a depoliticized Fed, and that means not just, doing what the president wants. It means not trying to torpedo the president either. And I think we'll get that out of Hassett. I hope it's Hassett. I'd be very happy if it were Bessent, but he's taken himself out of it. So we'll see.
Time will tell. And as we're talking time, we're coming towards the end of the year, and businesses out there are probably going, okay, how can I put money into capital expenses? How can I do this to help offset some of my gains, some of my taxes? Dean Owen, we welcome your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the One Big Beautiful Bill did some great things for America. We're not going to really see a whole lot of the benefits until next year. It looks like tax refunds are going to be about $1,000 higher on average this year. And for those seniors 65 and over, quite a bit more than $1,000. But on the business side, looking at capital expenditures with permanent expensing, Section 179, bonus depreciation, lots of opportunities there. You really need to know where you stand because you want to dial in so that you get the qualified small business, the deduction for qualified business income. You want to dial that depreciation in so you're hitting just the right numbers. And now's the time to be planning on that. If you don't have enough depreciation is where you would lose on that. But make sure if you got any capital, you need capital expenditures that are going to need to be made. They get made this year. If you're having a tough year, and some people always are, you can always accelerate income to the extent possible. Delay paying bills to the extent possible. If you're having a real good year, one of the quickies, the IRS will allow a safe harbor for paying up to 12 months of ordinary business expenses, your rent, your utilities, your stuff like that. So you can pay that ahead up to 12 months, and that way next year you've got the additional cash flow. Now, of course, that next year you won't have those deductions, but landlords, if you are a renter, then and you want the next year's deduction in this year, then write the check, put it in the registered mail on December 31st for all of next year. The landlord will not get it until next year, so it's not going to jack up the landlord's tax. You've also got the Augusta deduction, so you've got a couple of weeks here left. You can rent your home to your corporate entity for up to 2 weeks and pay zero income tax on that. So the business gets the deduction. The owner does not have to pay. That's a super easy deduction to get. It's called the Augusta rule because of the masters, people renting their houses out. The IRS says 14 days or less is de minimis. I didn't make the rules. I just know what they are. So, catch that one. If you haven't looked at a workplace retirement plan, it's getting to you late in the year to put a lot of them in place for this year. But man, there are some massive tax breaks and tax credits, which are dollar for dollar reductions that are available for setting up workplace retirement plans. Even if it's just a sole owner, sole person company, they can still set those up, get some phenomenal tax breaks, get some phenomenal tax credits. Now's time to be looking at all that, put it all in place, figure out, make sure you've got a plan and a relationship with your financial and tax provider.
And I'm sure they could reach out to you, right, at oncpa.com, correct, Dean?
Absolutely.
That's where you can find him. And Rod, where can we find you as we close out this segment of the Business Pulse?
rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org. We have tens of thousands of subscribers for our daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. And closing in on 300,000 followers on X. There's a reason. So come to rodmartin.org.
I have it delivered to my inbox every morning, sometimes twice a day. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I love it. We're going to talk about crypto. We're going to talk about Old Glory Bank, and we're going to bring Eric Olhausen in from Old Glory Bank on the other side of this break. You are in the Business Pulse.
My name is Dean Owen. I'm a CPA. I have a master's degree in taxation and a personal financial specialist. Tax laws are always changing. That's why you need a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. You need someone to help you pay the least amount of tax legally, because if your business and retirement tax planning is not tax smart, it's probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today. Call me. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. That's what my team and I do. This is who we are. I'm a combat veteran, unapologetically American, unapologetically pro-God, pro-life, and pro-Second Amendment. If those are the values you seek in a tax and money advisor, call us. Again, let's disinherit the government and not your kids. We're not afraid to share our values, and we share them with you.
America, welcome back inside the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham, and we're brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net. And one of the founding members, we're proud to welcome him back. It's Eric Olhausen from Old Glory Bank. Welcome in, Eric.
Good to see everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. I've been breezing through your social media on Old Glory Bank. On LinkedIn, I check it out on X, and it says the unification of banking and crypto is here. Walk us through what that means for Old Glory Bank and people that may want to become an Old Glory Bank customer.
Absolutely. Thanks for giving me the chance to talk about Old Glory Bank. Just what we are introducing sometime next quarter or the first part of 2026 will be the unification, really the first we've seen of traditional banking, seeing your checking and savings, moving money, credit card activity, that sort of thing that everyone's used to, but within the same banking environment or the same interface, also being able to engage in cryptocurrency transactions, stable coin, just a completely consistent, seamless activity or ability for our customers to engage in really their total financial picture. And to us, this is really the ultimate fulfillment of what we've always promised to our customers. First of all, your listeners might be familiar, but we are a pro-America, freedom-oriented bank, Old Glory Bank, customers in every state of the union. Some really great folks involved in it. Some of my co-founders are John Rich, on our board, Larry Elder, Ben Carson, Sean Spicer, Bill Shine, number of great folks, the former governor of Oklahoma, Mary Fallon. And our promise to our customers is to never cancel them for their views or the industry they operate in. Firearms being a great example, crypto also being an example that had been really penalized by the previous administration and debanked by a lot of other financial institutions. But for us, what we set out to do several years ago was to introduce financial liberty to America, because there really was a culture of being stifled within the banking system. And for us, as I said, this next gen banking that we'll be introducing really is the fulfillment of that, because no longer will people have to, wait for a wire transfer if they're making that we have a ton of small businesses as our customers. We bring on several hundred every month of new customer relationships with businesses, thousands of individual accounts as well, coming on, and routinely. And this really allows things to be instantaneous, take advantage of the blockchain and smart contracts, really drive down the friction of time and, let's say, foreign currency exchange if you're doing international payments, or if it's just as simple as general middle America wanting to understand how do you buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP, and normally it's a very cumbersome process, and maybe some of the listeners are complete pros at it, but a lot of people it can be really intimidating with the various exchanges to open an account with, the wallets, the interaction, trying to get money from your fiat or your US dollar accounts, trying to get it on chain can take days sometimes, or have fees. If to do it immediately, you need to use a credit card or a debit card. And we've really stripped out that friction and really, we feel, put together an interface that is made for the broad audience of hardworking Americans that are looking to expand their financial capabilities within our system. So we're really excited about it. I will say, if there's a full online demonstration, a video kind of or not interactive, but an online demo on the front page, the top of our website at oldglorybank.com. And I'd encourage anyone who's interested in really seeing what it looks and feels like. Will learn a lot by going there.
Dean Owen, I know you probably got a couple questions for Eric about this. I know I do.
Mine resolve around the reporting, because, of course, account balances have to be recorded to IRS on a periodic basis. How do you do that when you have an asset, the Bitcoin or the digital currency, that floats in value?
Well, there's no, so we're not paying interest. In fact, stablecoin is not allowed to earn interest. And so there wouldn't be any, IRS reporting the way on your checking and savings, would have interest being reported. Just an asset. Initially, we're not holding the assets. We are allowing you to link to your external wallet. I don't think that really would be, assets wouldn't really be a reportable event, even if we were holding on a custodial basis for our customers. But there's really nothing that we see would be, require additional reporting. And that's really the one of the attractions here, is just essentially for the transactions flying over to the top of the Federal Reserve and things that your normal ACH and debit transaction channels would have more of a trail there. But we certainly envision things like firearm purchases, where people are really suspect for good reason, of the traditional banking system and the tracking that Visa and MasterCard have communicated, having an interest in doing. There really are some great functionality that we're introducing with this platform, as well as the Old Glory Pay, PayPal equivalent that we've had up and running for a couple years now.
Yeah. In your view, Eric, how is the debanking situation going? Is it getting meaningfully better under Trump? And what would it take for that to just roar back with a vengeance if we lost an election?
Yeah, well, you just answered it, and I think irrespective of the fact that Trump did introduce an executive order, against debanking, and actually compelled the wrongdoers, all the banks that were escorting out customers that they didn't like. He's encouraged them or actually compelled them to go back and take those customers on. Kind of jokingly among our crowd at Old Glory Bank, we're like, "Hey, it's great you say no more debanking, but we've always been here, solving that on a market based." In a market-based manner, really being a market-based solution. We actually feel that, look, if a business wants to do that, that's fine. That's all the more reason for of a role for a bank like Old Glory Bank. But you raised the point absolutely, Rod, is that even if the big banks now are kind of having this, mea culpa, and they're self-flagellating and say, oh, well, we won't do this anymore, and we recognize that we had been, but we won't anymore. Why would that not change the second you're in a different administration that does encourage and support that? So we feel we really are a market-based solution there, and why would anyone stick with the bank even if in today's environment they seem willing to serve someone? That's certainly not on a reliable basis the second the next administration comes in, perhaps, if it's not the way that we would want it to go.
How do you insulate yourself from it? And more on top of that, how do you insulate your clients from that, your customers, when, say, things go sideways in 2028? How does that look for Old Glory Bank, and what kind of things can you set up to make sure that my money is going to be safe and I'm not going to get thrown to the curb?
Well, the simplest is come to oldglorybank.com and open up an account. I mean, that's really why we exist, was that what we are observing in the marketplace of banks not serving everyone, banks reporting transactions to the feds if they happen to see someone was shopping at Cabela's or Bass Pro and therefore might be a firearms owner. So that's really why we exist. And I would encourage anyone to recognize that, hey, having multiple relationships. I mean, we'd love all of your banking, but why not spread things out and make sure you're with a bank that you can always rely on? And that's even separate from the great functionality and capabilities I was describing earlier with our next gen banking that'll be introduced next year.
So as you introduce this to your customers, I always hear FDIC insured, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Does that still blanket that, or how does that work when you start getting into the crypto world and you start to merge banking with it?
Yeah, not for the crypto.
Okay.
Now, I will point out, so certainly your checking savings, that's all FDIC insured up to $250,000. And of course, if you have a spouse, you can spread it out. It's per individual, or even a joint account. You can leverage that 250. As to the crypto holdings, though, we will be issuing OGB USD, our issued stablecoin, which the Genius Act really has defined and carved out the role of banks going forward as the sanctioned issuers of stablecoin. Stablecoin is as safe as it must be, and as defined in the Genius Act, must be 100% backed by U.S. Treasuries of maturity no greater than 93 days. So essentially, liquid cash treasuries, to where it essentially is similar to a digital or electronic cashier's check. It's universally accepted. It's the ERC-20 platform that I could send stablecoin to you. You could easily convert it to fiat, and so it's got that safety and security. Now, if you move funds, from your checking account onto the blockchain and have it in our stablecoin, certainly the second you buy something with it, if you buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, XRP, you name it, then, it is what it is in the marketplace, and it certainly has, has its ups and downs, and would not, have any of the securities that you'd have up until that point, or the security that you have up to that point.
Gotcha. I know there's going to be a big education process with yours truly and with other people that are just starting to put their toe into the crypto water. Now it's going to merge with banking, and we'll keep tabs on you guys if that's all right, Eric. Check in with you after the
Absolutely.
first of the year. And
Yeah,
Dean or
thanks-
Rob, if you got
thanks.
any other questions, fire away with Eric.
I noticed that there's a lot of talk about deregulation going on in the whole banking sector as a general rule. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground from that.
Well, certainly the regulation has been tough. The number of banks in the U.S. gone from, just 10 or 15 years ago, there were something like 8,000 or more banks, and now it's more like 4,500. There is a tremendous amount of compliance burden on smaller banks, which I think is bad for our economy. It's the small local community banks are the ones who lend the most to small business, and it's just there's a very important role in our marketplace, and so we certainly encourage flexibility and easing of regulation. I think it's very important. It was very forward thinking for the current administration to introduce the Genius Act, because it really has defined what stablecoin is, what characteristics that it must have, who can issue them, and really is unifying how people acquire stablecoin, what is backing it. And it really is going to drive essentially displacing, the demand for treasuries and U.S. dollar, that, the petro contracts in dollars, as that's kind of gone down and taken a little bit of pressure off, or lessened the amount of demand for our dollar. Because the U.S. is so forward thinking with stablecoin, that's a new kind of invigorating demand element for the U.S. dollar. And so we certainly welcome that. I think so. Some regulation is good because it makes it less of Wild West for newer areas like crypto. But the nuts and bolts administrative regulation of banks, we certainly applaud. Lightening the load, because it really can be prohibitive, operationally on a lot of smaller organizations.
Understood. Eric, once again, thank you for your time. We're going to be checking in with you guys after the first of the year to see how the crypto and banking are getting along, in Q1 as we move this forward. We wish you all the best at Old Glory Bank. A Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and blessings to all your employees and your customers. And thank you so much for being a part of the Freedom Chamber as a founding member. We really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.
And you can find Eric online at oldglorybank.com. Dean, where can we find you at?
OwenCPA.com. Jump online, connect with my team. Let's figure out a way to make sure we disinherit the government and not your kids.
Absolutely. And on our way to 300,000 followers, aren't we, Rod?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Come to rodmartin.org, where we do daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. And closing in on that 300,000 followers on X, that's all happened really fast. There's a reason you want to come.
rodmartin.org. Guys, thank you so much for all that you do. And this has been the Business Pulse.
Hey, the Freedom Chamber is amazing. I'm so glad that we get to be here on the Freedom Chamber's Business Pulse. This is an organization you should support. It's an organization of which you should be a member. The Freedom Chamber is getting important things done in this country. And honestly, we need spaces for people who believe the sorts of things that if you're watching this, you probably do. We have gone through this extended period of not just canceling individuals, but just boycotting businesses and doing terrible things, debanking. Nigel Farage, who is likely to be the next prime minister of the United Kingdom, was actually debanked by all the major banks in the United Kingdom. And of course that happens here, and we get de-insured and all these terrible things. The Freedom Chamber is fighting for you. The Freedom Chamber is here to make sure that you're protected, that your values matter, they count, and they're in the public square. So I encourage everybody to join the Freedom Chamber.